Well, we picked a chassis for the Bronco build. Let's have a look. The SSD Trail King truck chassis was designed specifically by SSD to be able to use aftermarket SCX-10-2 suspension and geometry parts. The important thing about this is that the SSD Trail King has already combined all of the most amazing factory upgrades you could possibly want onto the single chassis in the kit, all there ready to go. In this case, we've already used some of the extra SSD option parts on this kit, which we're going to highlight together in this video. Starting up front, we can see that the SSD Trail King has been designed to use a front 4-link suspension setup. It uses 3 suspension links, 2 lowers on the bottom of the offset front axle differential case, 1 on the top of the suspension in the front of the top of the axle case, and then of course there's the 4th link, which is a track bar mounted from the right hand side knuckle up to a frame mounted aluminum bracket. This geometry is incredibly common in full-size off-road, and it also allows the perfect steering geometry so that you can eliminate bump steer entirely. With this setup, you can see clearly that the suspension has full compression and expansion, and there's absolutely no bump steer available in this truck whatsoever. Of course, the key to that is that the steering link from the servo and the track bar link are parallel. And you can see in this situation, SSD has nailed the geometry perfectly, and using the correct servo horn will give you perfect steering geometry. Moving from the front towards the back, you can see that the suspension geometry on the Trail King has triangulated links, very clearly visible by the rear suspension on the right hand side. With the flat skid that they've created in the center of the truck, there's little to no hang-ups possible, which is really good for off-roading and getting over obstacles. On the bottom here, on the bottom slider, you can see the assembled slider unit that comes with the Trail King kit. This includes an in and out adjustable side mount. The bracket on the side here actually slides up and down, which is actually in and out, on these 2 rails here. So you can adjust the width of the actual rocker slider, and it's still solid mounted into this covered side plate. This is what the side plate looks like when it's disassembled. There's a top cover that gives it a smooth finish over top of all these bumpy parts, but this allows an actual slide here in 2 positions, so when the whole thing is assembled, you can adjust the width of the sliders to match your body, and then when you put the cover on, you still end up with this perfectly smooth surface, which is fantastic for off-roading. Moving to the top of the truck, you can see from the front to the rear, the servo mount has been manufactured to go across the rail and allow perfect suspension geometry for the steering. There's also a plastic housing metal gear scale transmission in the center of the truck that's married to a plastic case metal gear transfer case with a 1-to-1 output ratio on the front shaft and the rear shaft. This allows for a very reliable drivetrain. It's a 10.5-to-1 ratio between the motor and the drive shaft for the front and rear output, and this allows you a very reliable, strong transmission and transfer case setup, which also gives you tons of room for interior builds, which is why we are picking this chassis for our Class 1 Bronco build. As you can see, in the center of the truck, there's very little underneath the truck to possibly hang up on obstacles. The drive shafts are made out of solid steel with steel universal yokes, very strong, and an excellent drive shaft angle for the front and the rear. You can clearly see here that we have the flat slide here on the side. The side plate would clear this underneath after the slider has actually been assembled and matched to the body width. And there's a huge amount of space in here for the interior. Just huge. The rear of the chassis mimics an SCX2 axial style frame, although clearly labeled with the SSD label and specific to their mounting and geometry. Most SCX2 parts can be mounted onto this frame very easily. Replacing skid plates, shock towers, link mounts, and other similar SCX10-2 parts will easily fit onto the Trail King. We opted to use this kit because it contained all the upgrade parts that we would have already wanted for our Class 1 competition truck. We've got all steel drive shafts already included. It comes with all hardened and machined ring and pinion gears inside the locked axles for the front and the rear housing. They are very low profile with as much plastic profiling as possible on the plastic housings to allow all the rocks to slide very easily under the truck. With the flat skid, there's very little possibility of a hang up. We really like the really smooth sliders, and that's going to help a lot in off-roading. Besides that, having an incredibly solid universal built into the front axle is definitely going to help the reliability of the truck. In the front, along with all the hardened gears, are fully machined steel yokes. Every one of these trucks already comes with the strongest universal shaft output possible on the market today. That is an absolute giant of a universal already assembled and installed in the Trail King kit. Things as simple as using set screws to lock on the machined aluminum C-hubs and knuckles onto the axle housing keeps the setup even more clean and allows for even smoother transition through the terrain, dirt, anything like that that might hang up on the axle. The added convenience of having the all aluminum knuckles and C-hubs in the truck definitely gives you the confidence that when this thing is done, you do not have to repair this truck. This should last for many, many, many hard days of off-roading. We added the optional outboard shock towers on the SSD Trail King. These shock towers actually stick out away from the frame and allow you a whole bunch more space where the frame narrows in the front. The shock towers coming away and off of the side of the frame allow you to put more engine options in the front. In our case, we're using it for a cross-mounted battery tray, and the wide shock towers allow us to do that. SSD has their own shocks. These are completely machined aluminum threaded cap. It's a fully threaded shock body for adjusting the spring preload. The spring rate is quite soft, which I think is ideal for anything Lexan or light hard body builds. And of course there's all steel balls put into the bottom rod end on the shock, and a very nice machined spring collar on the bottom and the top. The drive shafts on the truck are already an incredibly large size full steel universal drive shaft. They have a multi-point slide in them, and I have a really hard time believing that anybody's going to break one of these. With the full steel driveline that's already included in the transfer case and the very small 10.5:1 transmission, I have a feeling the drivetrain on this truck is going to be the last thing to break. We went with the SSD Trail King as the base for our Class 1 Bronco build, not because we wanted to make use of a scale drivetrain, not specifically because we wanted offset axles in the front, not specifically because we wanted a 419 tire size and a chassis that would match, but basically because after building the SSD Trail King, there's nothing else to do. The kit already comes with all of the upgraded components you could ever want to put into a competition built truck. So I don't know why you would choose anything else. I agree that an SCX10 is a really fantastic platform, and the builder's kits are a great price. But if you decide to use a builder's kit in a competition environment, you're going to want to upgrade things like drive shafts and axle shafts. You're going to want to upgrade transmission gears and a few other things. And by the time you do all that, you can get a Trail King kit with a few extra upgrades already on it for basically the same cost and have it all built at once. No more repairs. That's the reason we chose the SSD Trail King, and I'm really excited to have it put underneath of our Bronco build. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.